So now that we're finally pulling apart the keg, use a rubber mallet to hit all the solid contact points of the rear iron. If you're planning on keeping any parts to reuse from a good running motor, you need to know right now that they must be used in the exact same place that they came from. I recommend being very organized, and I'll get into this very shortly and how we're going to do this. When removing the irons and rotors, parts are likely going to fall out, such as the corner of the actual apex seal, the corner seals, and the side seals. If you're not going to keep any of these parts, the old ones actually can be very useful in cleaning and helping remove all the stuck ones. Once you start lifting the rear iron up, it's best not to drop it back down in case any of the parts have fallen and to prevent any damage. When the rear iron has broken free, lift it straight up to clear the eccentric shaft and the alignment dowels, also protecting the rear gear bearing at the same time.
So as you can see, my corner seals in the corner of my apexes came out, which is fine. Just put them where they belong. Okay, so we're working on the gear side of the rear rotor. If you're planning on keeping any of these parts, like if you have a good motor and you're just building, so I'm hoping it's just soft seals I'm replacing, which may be these the oil control rings here. So if you're keeping anything, be sure that everything goes to where it belongs, matching the same rotors, all the springs. So you have your side seals and there'll be a spring underneath. You have your corner seals, your corner apex, your corner side seal spring. So to know how to get all these exactly where they belong without writing all over it, which you're likely going to clean off anyways. So this is the gear side. So beside each apex, I know you won't be able to see this, but once you see a rotor, you'll know. So gear side is odd numbers. So I have a 5, I have a 3, and I have a 1. There's also Japanese insignias, which is the length of your side seal. So you can't do anything about that. You're gonna have to size the new ones. But the biggest thing that matters is your odds belong to gear, and your evens belong to front.
So apex seals from the factory are 3-piece, but in the picture here I have 2-piece apex seals. So while you have 6 apex sets, there's 12 corner seals and side seals along with their springs. Now in this video I won't be pulling the oil control rings off the rotors, but these are just on the sides of the rotor, 2 per side, and they also have springs underneath them. They can easily be pried up with a screwdriver.
So however you decide to take all of these out to the numbers, I like to go clockwise, matches the numbers. So 5, and the closest clockwise would be this corner. So I'm going to put all these parts in a number 5. So the apex springs, the corner seal spring, and the corner of the apex seal. Be very careful with these. If they're fighting you, you need to gentle up on them. If you have spare parts from another motor, they work really well at getting these out without wrecking any good parts. So now that we have all the accessible parts out at the top, we're gonna want to carefully lift the rotor up just a little bit and use one of the old rings now. You're gonna want to replace this anyways. And we're gonna double wrap it around the apex seals so they don't go and spring out anywhere.
So while I pull this rotor out, you really only need to use this O-ring if you're planning on reusing the parts. If you are, slide the O-ring to the center of the rotor just before you clear the housing, otherwise they will tip out anyways. And to save time, I'll skip the second rotor in the video, but just to note, each rotor does face opposite directions. So the gears face outward and the faces face inward.
So I don't know if you can see down there, but I lost corner seal, some springs, and some side seals. Just carefully transport this to a safe spot. I'm just going to quickly repeat that process of removing all the seals and getting them stored away before they get misplaced, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, for the next step is just to remove these dowel pins. Simple tools, you don't need no fancy tool. You can get this from Mazda Tricks. Really easy to use. All we're going to do is just thread in here, just don't bury it. So at this point, nothing is holding the rotor housing on once the dowel pins are off. So you just lift. Mine's gonna make a mess because of the oil problem I'm having. Okay, so the next couple steps are, we got 2 more dowel pins to pull out, just in these corners here. We'll use the exact same puller tool. Okay, so after removing these 2 dowel pins, the next step is to get the center iron off. Again, when we pull this off, there's going to be apex seals potentially stuck to it, so keep in mind that. We're also going to be rocking the iron around this lobe for the rear rotor. So as smoothly as possible without damaging anything and being mindful of bearings, we'll just get this thing off. Now this does move, so you can use that to your benefit. Everything looks great, nothing stuck. We're gonna start doing the same process of removing all the loose pieces, but keep in mind that the rotor isn't facing the same direction as the other one. So now we're working on the front side of the rotor because the gear side is at the front. On the rear, this is the front rotor. So the rear rotor gear side faces the back of the motor, and the front rotor faces the front of the gear side faces the front of the motor. So now that we're on the inside of the rotor, we're dealing with even numbers again. So again, using old parts from bad rotors, the easiest way of fishing these springs out is with really fine, delicate stuff. There's nothing better than fishing out a spring with a bad spring. You are free to pull the eccentric shaft out. Just be sure to pull straight up. Just nice and gently protect the rotor bearing. Yeah, and just be sure to wrap it up. Keep it free of debris so there's no abrasive surfaces on the lobes. After the front rotor has been removed and everything is clear, this front housing isn't being supported by anything any longer after those dowel pins were removed earlier. So you can just simply lift it. You may have to give it a light tap, but it should come pretty easily. Now the very last step to finish the disassembly of the motor is to just rotate it back to this side. And we can remove the rear gear set after we had left these two bolts in place. Light hammer may be needed. So that's it, we're done. If it was helpful, please like, please subscribe. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask it below. Really appreciate you guys watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys again.